On the rocker arms, look for wear and cracks and things like that. If they have cracks and wear, get rid of them. Again, the new components these days are just too cheap to take a chance on using something that's just going to fail and cause a major catastrophe inside your motor. So what we've chosen here is a brand new set of factory replacement push rods. These are just a regular steel push rod. We've also chosen a brand new set of just factory replacement rocker arms. Nothing fancy about these rocker arms. They're exactly what came stock on pretty much all the stock motors. Now what I like to do is start with the push rods. Now first thing first, take a push rod and drop it inside the motor. And take note where the factory push rod guide is as opposed to the top of the push rod. This one's about 2 inches down. So that's going to tell me I need to put grease about 2 inches down. That way it gets ample lubricant. So what I like to do, this is the fun part, is put a big blob of grease in my hand and just take each push rod and touch it on the end, touch it on the other, and about 2 inches down where it's going to go through the push rod guide in the head, put a little bit of grease on there too, and drop it into place. And just follow that all the way across. And a little grease. And we'll do this until they're all in. Make sure when you put the push rod in it, it sits in the cup of the lifter. All right, next I like to put a little bit of grease on the threads of the studs and on the valve tips. All right, once that's done, now we're ready to lube up the rocker arms. Just simply, again, put some grease on your finger and put some lube on the inside where the fulcrum ball, the pivot ball, is going to be. Make sure you got nice grease inside there. Drop the ball in place and put a little dab of grease on the top. Now make sure you grease the bottom side. That's going to ride on the valve tip. And again, I like to put a little extra dab of grease where the push rod's going to go. And just slide it on. And just do that all the way across. Little dab of grease inside. A little on the bottom. A little dab inside the push rod area. Drop the fulcrum pivot ball in and set it in place. All right, now that all those are on, now we're ready to put the rocker nuts on. Now just put them on finger tight and then tighten them down about halfway down. Now we're only taking these down about halfway. There's still plenty of movement here. We want to keep that so when we're ready to adjust the valves, we still have a little bit of movement. Okay, now we're ready to adjust the valves. Now some people think this is a very complicated process, and it's really simple. First thing we're going to need to do is just put something on the front of the motor to turn the engine over. I like the little crank hubs that we use. Now, the next step is we got to find on the camshaft bottom dead center, or the back side of the lobe. So as the lifter's sitting here and the cam comes by, it's got to push it up, then we want to get it back down. So we're going to rotate the engine until we see both these rockers hit bottom dead center. This one's going down. Now once they're both down, give it about another quarter turn or so. That just assures that you're really on the back side of the lobes. Now that both of these are down, what we can do is tighten these up. Just take a wrench and tighten these up. An easy way to do this is feel the push rod. Right now, if I turn the push rod, there's a little up and down movement here, and I can rotate it really easy. So what we're going to do is rotate the push rod as we slowly tighten. As soon as I feel tension, there's a little bit of tension right there. Right now, it takes effort to turn that push rod, and I only turn it just a smidge. So we're right now at 0 lash. Now, these are hydraulic lifters. All hydraulic lifters, you need to set the plunger depth a little bit. These actually have plungers. If you push on a rocker arm, you'll actually see the plunger go up and down. That's the plunger area. Now we need to set a certain amount of depth. Now some people say once you find 0 lash, you want to give it a half a turn or 3/4 of a turn. Don't go any far beyond that. Just do about a half to 3/4 of a turn. So what I do is I put the socket on there and I make a visual in my head. Okay, that's at about, say, call this 3 o'clock. Well, I'm going to go over here to 9 o'clock. We're going to give it a half, and then what I like to do is a smidge, just for good luck. So that's set. That one's done. So we're going to do the same thing to this. We can see all the play, so I'm going to start tightening it. Every now and then I'll check it. Still movement. Tighten it down a little bit. Still got a little bit of movement. Once we start getting down where the movement's minimal, then we just start twisting the push rod and go in little increments. Do a little more, a little bit more, a little more, almost there. There it is, right there. That little bit of a smidge of a turn made it where there's tension on this push rod. Now what I can do is, again, set my wrench on there, find a spot, and say, okay, I'm going to go 180 degrees, a half a turn, plus a smidge for good luck. Half a turn and a smidge. Set. Do that to all these. It's super simple. So the next one we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go back over this, rotate the engine. An easy way to do this too is watch for the intake lifter or valve to close. And the easy way to tell which one is which is if you look here, the exhaust port, the exhaust rocker arm is right over the top of the exhaust port. The intake rocker arm and intake valve is right over the intake port. So it's an easy way to tell. Watch when the intake closes. When the intake closes, give it another about a 1/4 turn or so, and that sets it on the back side of the cam. So we're watching for this one right here. This is the intake. The exhaust one's over the exhaust port. So we're watching for the intake. We just watched the lifter go down, and it's on the back side now. So we give it a little bit of a turn. Going to do the same thing. Crank this over till we're getting low on movement. Just a little at a time now. We're looking for that tension. There it is, right there. Just a little bit of tension. Now again, a half a turn and a smidge. You can go 3/4 of a turn too. Some people recommend 3/4 of a turn. I don't like to set the plunger that deep. A half a turn should be plenty. And again, do the same thing to this other one.